Hello, welcome to the program, The Desk on Global TV. The program comes to you on Monday, Wednesday, and then Friday, where we look into leading stories on the dailies, where we analyze them to help you to understand basically what those issues are being discussed on the newspapers. Of course, the program provides an opportunity to invite journalists who have the guts to provide information on some of these topics that will be trending in the newspaper, like the way we had today in the morning. I'm so glad to be with you. My guest in the studio is an in-house, as a matter of fact, in the person of Oyi Agbomofuogbe. It's a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you, Toss. It's my delight.
Yes, I'm sure you've been reading the newspapers. Today, on the dailies, we saw so many issues that are quite very trending in society that people are talking about. That we will find people in a group or either in the beer parlor, wherever they might be, in the vehicles traveling, they talked about those issues in the newspaper. One of these issues is the issue of the rejection of Turaki-led PDP and then approving that of Wike-backed PDP by INEC chairman. I remember there was this meeting that was held with these faction leaders by INEC, and I was really thinking maybe for the convention that was held sometimes November 15 and 16 in Ibadan, probably must have put this matter off. But having met with the INEC chairman, Professor Joaz Ojo Amupitan, and then again coming out with this information that there would have been a reason to adopt the Ibadan Convention as the authentic PDP leadership because there was this court ruling asking them not to carry out that convention, which means they did that against the constitutional mandate of what they're supposed to have done. And so with what has been on ground, the one which is being led by Mohammed Abdulhamid Mohammed, that the one that is being backed by
Wike.
Yesterday we began to hear that, and today it became news trending all over the country. In your opinion, as a journalist, what do you think should have been done properly in getting the house in order?
First of all, again, thank you, Topsy, for having me on the program. The issue of PDP has been a long time coming. Of course, it's far predates the emergence of Professor Josh Amupitan as the chairman of INEC. However, we have to now look at the conversation around factions in the party. It's natural that Turaki SAN, who is the factional chairman of the bloc loyal to the governor of Oyo State, Seyi Makinde, saying that, look, there are no factions in the PDP. In fact, Turaki goes ahead to accuse INEC chairman of being biased. That is understood, given the context of these developments. It's political, and of course, tensions are very high. However, the grounds on which the INEC chairman, or if you like, INEC as an entity, has made this decision to say that, look, we cannot recognize you, is to say that, first of all, there's a litany of litigations, all right, in this regard. And himself being not just a lawyer, not just a senior lawyer, but a professor of law for that matter, understands quite fundamentally that going ahead to recognize this quote-unquote faction of the PDP will be sui judice, because it will be INEC preempting the outcome of these matters that are already in front of competent courts. However, we also need to backtrack a little. There had been a court order stopping that convention, like you mentioned, for 15th and 16th of November in Oyo State, Ibadan, in Oyo State. Again, there was also a counter order, so to speak, from Oyo State this time, not from the Federal High Court in Abuja, from Oyo State, saying that the convention could go on. As a matter of fact, that particular court order from Oyo State did say that INEC, it mandated INEC to monitor the convention. That convention also, of course, produced its own leadership because apparently it had been tagged elective convention for a reason, and we saw the who is who of the PDP and all of that. But again, I'll tell you something real quick. As it stands today, it is even beyond the issue of whether INEC recognizes any of the factions. It is not a question of how is it that at one point it was as if the soul of the PDP was being tugged at by, well, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, who is no longer at the party now, and Nyesom Wike. Today, the dynamics have changed drastically. It is now between Nyesom Wike and his supporters on the one hand, Seyi Makinde and his supporters on the other hand. And ironically, Makinde had been, as it appeared at least, a very strong ally of Mr. Wike. At least they were both members of the so-called 5G governors. But today, we're not so sure how many of the G's are left. But take it or leave it.
Has been dismembered.
Exactly, as it stands today. Because, I mean, we've seen Wike say a lot of unprintable things about Seyi Makinde and the other people in this blog. Just a few days ago, Seyi Makinde also came out. I mean, he held a media chat where he also talked about Wike and certain things that didn't sound so nice.
Yeah.
However, we can understand that's how politicians do their thing.
Yeah.
As it stands today, the issues are clear.
Yeah.
The governor of Oyo State, Seyi Makinde, has ambition to stand for president in 2027, which is well within his rights. But the man has also said that Wike can support whoever he wants. It is within his rights. I'm not bothered. I mean, he has the right, the inalienable right to support anybody he wishes or pleases.
Yes.
However, he says he also has the right to say he's not supporting President Bola Tinubu, and that much is very clear.
Yeah, the house is crumbling.
Yes.
That G5 is crumbling. The question here is, what in the first place, PDP, a well-known political party, an opposition party has to speak this time, but before then it became political and opposition.
Right.
It was the party that ruled Nigeria for 60 years. At what point in time it's allowed the members of the party to play that game to an extent that today, Wike stands to be the only person that decides what becomes what about the PDP. That as a matter of fact, the party is gradually crumbling and being phased out in Nigerian political historical books. It's quite very unfortunate that we have found ourselves at that level, because it's not the best way to go, as a matter of fact. How do you view that?
There are people who believe, quite frankly, that the PDP either misread the political landscape for that entire 16 years, especially, I mean, those 16 years, especially going into the election in 2015, or the PDP was taken by some sort of political storm. Because if you look at the way the PDP was run between 2014 and into early 2015, you would see party leaders who believed against all odds there was no way former President Jonathan was not winning that election. As a matter of fact, some PDP senior members were already carrying on, as though they had already won the election. So when the results came in and the APC had won the election, it didn't settle up until now. From my interaction with very senior PDP insiders, off and on television, you can tell that they have not recovered from the shock that came with that loss in 2015. Again, what does that say to you? It says the PDP was never prepared for opposition. You see, that's the edge that the APC has over the PDP by default. The AC, the ACN coming to become the APC had always been in the opposition. In fact, right from the AD days. So they knew that, look, we have to play this position as consistently, as relentlessly as possible until we drive this whole initiative to a logical conclusion, which they did successfully in 2015. And now the APC has seen both sides of the coin, as I like to put it. What does that mean? It simply means that they had been in the opposition long enough to know how that side of the politics of this country works. Now they've been in the saddle, they've been the ruling party for the 11th year now, since 2015. So again, they've seen both sides of the coin, so they can tell you how it works. The PDP cannot categorically or confidently say the same both sides of the coin, because as it stands right now, the PDP is not able to stand on one leg as far as the opposition is concerned. And I'll give you a quick example. We can say yes, Wike, Minister of the FCT, is a de facto member of the PDP, but the question is he a committed member of the PDP? The answer is obvious. Other big names like, Atiku Abubakar have left the party. Several of them, they've left the party. Even some that you still see rolling, so to say, with the party, they are probably just there for the numbers. They're just numerical members, so to speak. They are not committed. They're not putting their time, their energy, and their resources in it. So, is the reason you say the defection from the PDP, as we have witnessed the last couple of months, has been very vehement? Because many persons believe that the PDP is not going to survive this storm, this political storm. Therefore, what do? We've got to move before it becomes too late.
It's very obvious that possibly the faction being led by Abdul Rahman Mohammed, the one that holds brief for the Wike-backed faction, it's very possible that's working towards supporting APC in 2027. And again, if you look at the number of people or the states that have actually collapsed themselves or become political converts for APC, as a matter of fact, it's going to be very, very difficult if the party refuses to manage itself very well. Because if something gets bigger, it's likely to explode. And that was exactly what happened with PDP at a point. PDP almost consumed every other political party in Nigeria, standing almost only alone. And because of the size, it was unable to manage itself, and then it promoted and they exploded to the level at which it is today. And another thing in political dynamics, if you look at the G5, If you look at the fight right now, as small as the G5 is or was, only 5 of them, that started this idea of being PDP and be supporting the current president. Now they are now fighting against themselves to an extent that, like you rightly mentioned, Seyi Makinde, who's the governor of Oyo State, is not in the same page with Wike, as a matter of fact.
Right.
And Wike is not actually believing in what Makinde is currently saying politically. And obviously, that indeed, Makinde has already said that he's not actually going to vote for Tinubu in 2027.
That's right.
Meanwhile, Wike stands to believe in that Tinubu stands to be his godfather and doing everything for him at the end of 2027. And so as small as that particular G5 is, and then there's infight among them, you can imagine at the larger perspective, APC, if it does not really manage itself very well, 2027 is going to be another thing altogether. How do you see it?
Well, there are members of the party, especially the frontliners, who believe that the leadership dexterity of the president, Bola Tinubu, who happens, of course, naturally to be the leader of the party, is something they can bank on. In fact, I think many of the members of the APC, in a manner of speaking, have taken that confidence to the bank, because they believe that if President Tinubu can lead the party from its early days, in the AG days, in 1999, being the governor of Lagos State for 8 years straight into 2007.
And the whole standing in the Southwest as the opposition.
Right, exactly. He understands those dynamics around playing opposition politics and shooting for the long shots. He knows all of that. He's been able to manage the evolution of the party from AD to AC to ACN and now to APC. He's been able to, quote unquote, produce a president who saw 8 years in office. I mean, seamlessly. And today he has become the president of the party, who we now know very clearly will stand for re-election in 2027, all else equal. A man that Wike has openly said he would support in 2027. And that, again, takes me back to your question of, it appears, whether the Wike-backed faction of the PDP will support Tinubu. Yeah, that's a given, really. Because my people say your voice will likely sound like that of the person who taught you how to sing. Wike is the de facto leader of that faction. So he is the pathfinder. He navigates on behalf of the group. So if Wike has said he's going to support President Tinubu in 2027, as it stands today, I do not see any other option for the other members of his, if you like, faction, quite frankly. But again, I think the real concern now should be, what does it do to the opposition, especially the PDP, that one would have thought by now is the leading opposition party in Nigeria? That has not been the case. The PDP has so much of infighting that it cannot even provide that sort of forward-looking visionary leadership for the PDP, and that's quite sad. Because as of today, for example, if you look at the number of governors who have left the PDP the last few months, look at the governors left, and then you're asking yourself, what chance does the PDP stand? Of course, I've spoken to PDP leaders time and again, and they always they have a way of exuding confidence. They express so much of optimism that, look, the PDP will get it right, and Nigerians will fall in love with the party again, and so on and so forth. And I'm asking myself, how will that happen? Thompson, you and I know how powerful governors are, whether in terms of governance, calling the shots, or influence regarding politics and things like that. So the president, Tinubu, knows that the more governors he has on his side, the greater his chances of winning re-election in 2027. But on the side of the PDP, how would that play out? Well, we have seen senior members of your party move to the ADC, for example. And that's a shame, really, because as of today, who are the vocal senior members of the PDP, especially amongst the governors? Just basically Bala Mohammed of Bauchi State and Seyi Makinde of Oyo State. And there are people who even believe now that from a political ideological stand, that what Seyi Makinde of Oyo State is doing is more of a self-serving move than anything else. Their thinking is that Seyi wants to stand for, Governor Makinde wants to stand for re-election in 2027. And the idea is whether he loses or he wins, he becomes the leader of the party by default, because that's what usually happens. Look at those.
He's standing in for presidency, or because I think he's serving the last.
This is the second term, second and final term. Exactly. Based on the constitution.
Yeah, but maybe in 2027, what does NCP get at the end of the day?
Well, he from insinuations, he's going to stand for president.
Okay.
So should he lose, for example, he becomes the leader of the party, because that's how it usually works.
And that leads me to Governor Seyi Makinde of Oyo State. Who is that man in the first place? Politically, does he have weight?
Well, I wouldn't know how we now determine who has weight and who doesn't. But in Nigeria, what we do know
why I said so, because the election that brought him to win the second term, as he is right now, If not for the fact that some people came to his help, otherwise we would have lost the election in 2023. Because of his affiliation with Wike, by that forming that G, whatever.
G5, right.
I often imagine that these people have suddenly introduced a new language in the political lexicon. You cannot be in PDP and then be serving like Wike is, serving APC. And it happens and nobody says anything. I've never seen that in any political structure where somebody believes in a political party that he believes he is, like the way he is in PDP, yet he serves for APC, and most times he speaks in favor of the APC and still fights the party that he had the opportunity to govern for several years until now. I often find it difficult. And that was exactly what they did at the point. Right. Wike, Autumn, Makinde,
Ogwai of Enugu State,
and all these persons, they came together. Meanwhile, they were PDP governors, and they supported nearly everything, or they were fighting everything that PDP came out with.
Right.
They would fight against it, and that was exactly what happened. That brought about the condition the PDP has today. I've never seen where somebody is in a political party, he thought he is, and then he believes ideologically for another party, and nobody says anything.
It's interesting. I've also posed this question to politicians across the aisle. One of the things they've always told me is that, God rest his soul, former Minister of Justice and Attorney General Bola Ige was in the AD, all right, but he was serving in the PDP government of former President Olusegun Obasanjo. However, the clear-cut distinction between the late Bola Ige and now the case of Nyesom Wike is the fact that Mr. Ige was not fighting his party, the AD, while he was there serving. Yeah. For him, it was a call to service. It was a call to serve the fatherland.
Yes.
Of course, Mr. Wike has also said this is a call to serve the fatherland. I remember on the 21st of August, 2023, on the day that the ministers alongside Wike himself were inaugurated. In the course of his inaugural address, he was interacting with journalists, and he said that, look, before I took up this appointment, because that question was also posed, how is it that you are in a PDP, in fact you are a leader in the PDP, very high-ranking one, and now you are in the APC government, how do you deal with that?
And your interests are not quite very palatable.
Yes, and at that time, things were looking a bit better, maybe far better than they are today. And his response was very clear. He said, look, in fact we have him on tape, saying that, he said, look, before I took up this appointment from Mr. President, I wrote to my ward chairman, to my local government chairman, to my state chairman, and to the national chairman of our party, and all of them, top to bottom, endorsed the appointment. They approved for me to take up this appointment. And here I am to serve my fatherland. This is not about partisanship. It is not about political parties or political affiliation and things like that. But of course, you and I know better now, 2 years down the line, that things are not exactly how Mr. Wike had put them at that point in time. But I think the real concern now should revolve around the PDP. Which is now raising the question of, will the PDP survive this? Is the PDP surviving this? Does the PDP need to rebrand itself?
That's another thing.
Yes, because the PDP now, some people say, is worse than a toothless bulldog. At the point they said it was a toothless bulldog. But today they say it is weaker than a toothless bulldog. So how do you get this dog to have teeth once more, and how do you also ensure that the dog bites every time? So I think that's what we are right now.
So many things indeed. I remember, just a few days ago, was it yesterday or so? Yeah, yesterday precisely, when I saw two senators, leaving PDP to join APC in on the Red Chamber. I'm talking about the one from River State and either Bayelsa or whatever, Barinada and Allwell Onyeso. The leadership of these two people from various states appeared at inside the chamber of the National Senate, for that matter. And at the end of the day, when they have been inducted into the APC, in his own speech, the Senate President, the person of Goza Pabio, said that they need to manage themselves very well. Talking about APC now. The APC needs to manage itself very well so that the problems that have bedeviled the PDP shouldn't find themselves in PDP going forward. So he is equally aware that if it is not well managed, it's not like a goat eating grass and not being mindful of the one that is poisonous. You know it. Yeah, that's exactly what this party is doing right now. Because they seem to be very happy that nearly everybody leaves and joins them, and they are clapping their hands. But again, although the more the merrier, but there's danger in it. There's danger in it.
Quite frankly, for the APC, it's about the numbers. Of course, Topsy, you and I know how numbers matter to politicians, especially during electionary years, such as we are already having right now. But the question is, even if members of the APC and indeed key players in the political space say that they can trust the leadership of President Bola Tinubu to help galvanize the APC, help midwife electoral processes in the interest of the APC, the question is, what happens if we were to remove, with a big if, the Tinubu factor from it? What happens? What do we have left? Again, what even happens after the 2027 general election? Because all of these hula baloo is around the 2027 general election. What happens the morning after, so to say? I mean, the results would have been in, everybody knows where they stand, we all know who won, who lost, and things like that. What happens? Especially with regards to those who have defected, because there are people who defected now, quite a number of them, I'm sure, because they already have a definite expectation of what the outcome will be regarding the elections in 2027. So what happens if things do not swing in that direction? Exactly. So that's going to create a very radical upset in the political landscape across political parties.
And I think I share this idea with you, because if you look at the governors, even the ministers, with all these things happening within the political landscape, we don't just hear many of them talking, particularly governors from the northern part of Nigeria, as if they have an agenda come 2027. But they don't seem to be cheerful when things like that are being discussed at the public domain, as if somebody is incubating something that might not be too palatable going forward in 2027. Equally the same. You know, very many of them appear not to be talking like any other. Only National Assembly, you hear defection and all that. You know, so it gives me a source of concern whether or not there's something we're expecting so dangerously ahead. I wouldn't know, but that's the way my mind interprets those issues.
Well, as it stands right now, if you look at the North, I mean, end to end across all the 19 states, what do you have apart from kind of where you have NNPP, which is very clear in terms of political affiliation and alignment, all right?
Yeah.
The other ones are APC states,
yes,
essentially.
But of course.
Taraba and, of course, apart from Adamawa, for example, where you have the PDP, of course, you have the PDP too in Bauchi.
Yes.
In the case of Taraba and Plateau, those are in principle already APC states as it stands today, all right?
Yeah.
So you're asking yourself, why are the APC governors not talking? Yes, there are two schools of thoughts in this regard. There are those who believe that, well, those states are already quote unquote in the bag, so there's no need to sweat over them, to bother yourself over them, because they're already on the President Tinubu's side. Others believe that, no, this silence means a lot. In fact, this silence is loud. President Bola Tinubu and the APC should, as a matter of urgency, come up with a strategy to address that, because it might hurt them real badly in 2027, politically speaking.
Yeah.
But then they also believe that, well, President Bola Tinubu understands the politics of this country from one end to the other, so it won't be much of an issue for him. In fact, this school of thought believes that the only challenge that the president could have had going into 2027 general election is the southern governors, I mean the governors from the south. And now that he has a good number of them in the bag, he has nothing to worry about. Perhaps that is the basis on which you see APC members bragging and exuding so much of confidence in terms of saying that not only will they win the election in 2027, they will win by a landslide. In fact, many of them even say that as it stands today, the APC has no opposition in this country.
Okay. But if you look at the factor of El-Rufai, though he's not in this government, what he does right now is to criticize. Any move the government takes, he criticizes it immediately. And sometimes he speaks for the North. And if you check, if you sit down and reconsider once again, some of his utterances, it will appear as if it's an agent pushed forward to speak on behalf of those you don't see behind him. So because sometimes he makes comment as if he's speaking as a northern leader. You know, despite the fact that he's not in government as it is now, although he was, but now he's not. And so when he speaks, he intends to speak as if he's speaking on behalf of the northern region. When policies, you know, are being designed and about to be implemented, he sees them as if they're anti the North. So again, as politics, as election gets closer, you know, some of these utterances will be chunked out into society, and then the mindset of the individual begins to take a different shape, whether or not to believe in what APC is, or probably to follow the ideology of what El-Rufai is saying over time.
You know, as it stands right now, just as you have in the South, the North is also ideologically polarized. We know officially when the North, as we know it is speaking, is often from the Northern Elders Forum, which has its own structures, its own systems, where you have a spokesman who speaks on behalf of the NEF. However, like you said, it is also possible that former Kaduna State Governor Malam Nasiru El-Rufai is being used as a front to throw certain kinds of kites.
Yes.
To say, let's see how it goes. You let's test it out. You push this agenda. You push this narrative and things like that. Then you have those who largely believe, especially within the APC, that the grouse that El-Rufai has with the APC, and in particular President Bola Tinubu, is the fact that he was not given appointment, right?
Ministerial appointment.
Exactly. And then you come to ask them, I mean, how is that supposed to be a problem? They say, look, if the man had been given a ministerial appointment, or maybe at least appointed as a senior aide to the president, he won't be on this side of the divide, obviously. That's what they argue. And the man, I've heard him say, I mean, Mr. Nasiru El-Rufai himself, time and again, that, look, I don't have any problem with whether or not you give me an appointment. If the president had appointed me, of course, I will wholeheartedly serve my fatherland. However, not giving me appointments does not take away anything from me, all right? Because according to him, he wasn't even screened at the Senate, because they told him that there was damning security report on him. And he says to them, what exactly is the report about? Till this point, I mean, he has said that severally, nobody has given him the slightest idea what the report is about. So he says the issue of whether you give me appointment or not is not even a concern for me, but I have a problem with the way this government is being run. I have a problem with the direction in which this government is heading. I have a problem with the policy thrust of this government and all of that. Of course, we understand that he has made his choice. One time it was one leg in ADC, one leg in SDP, but today we know where he stands. But I think for El-Rufai, it's not just so much about removing APC or bringing somebody from the North. No. I think Mr. El-Rufai gives the impression that he has an axe to grind with President Bola Tinubu, all right? Because I've seen the moves. The moves is more of, I may not be the one to become the next president, but I can have a say in determining who eventually becomes the next president. And many people I talk to about this say that President Bola Tinubu is not sleeping on it.
Yeah. Now, let's get to Seyi Makinde, the governor of Oyo State. Like you rightly mentioned, that he seems to be showing interest to come out in 2027 for presidential election. And I asked you this fundamental question, whether or not this man is politically strong, if he has weight. Because if he does not, and he's equally coming from the southern part of Nigeria, of Yoruba extraction, like the way Tinubu is, can one be seeing that there's a game they're playing here, so that he becomes a placeholder? So towards the end of the election, he stands out and then
endorses the president.
Otherwise, this is an individual who I consider that at the first time he indicated interest to become the governor, the way he became, there was this massive support he received. But when he served the four-year term, and then to go back at the way he is today, we notice, you know, he almost lost the election, as a matter of fact, even for the fact that, you know, he had to seek support from some heavyweight politicians that finally made him to become what he is today. Now, if a person comes out like the way he is to now seek for presidential election, do you think he will go anywhere? So if it does not go anywhere, it then means he's only playing around, so that at the end of the day, he will be considered as a placeholder, and then he hands over the structure to APC at the end of the day, and then he moves on and then seek for ministerial appointment by the time the election is concluded.
You know, growing up, Topsy, we used to play street football, and one of the rules was, even if you miss the ball, don't miss the man, right? So you can't miss both. You've got to get one of them. So for someone like Seyi Makinde, the goal may not necessarily be to win by all means. Because he also understands how the dynamics work.
Sure.
All right? But then he knows that head or tail, as they say, he will not lose. All right, because at the end of the day, if he runs, I mean, if he does run without having to stop at some point to endorse President Bola Tinubu or anyone else for that matter, he would invariably become the leader of the PDP as we know it. Which again, by the way, Wike is fighting because Wike knows the implication of that. Because if you look at Edo State now, for example, the PDP candidates in last year's election, Dr. Asuo Ighodalo, who lost on the PDP side, I mean, today is the leader of the party in that state, the de facto leader, even though you have the chairman and other members of the party, I mean, leadership of the party
that's Edo.
In the state. That's in the case of Edo.
Yeah.
So that's how it normally works with Nigerian politics. And look at Obi, for example. He lost the election in 2023 as the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, but he became the de facto leader of the party, even though the Labour Party itself now has more than enough, or I mean, more than a fair share of its own crisis, internal wrangling and all of that. So for Seyi Makinde, that can be a long-term card he's playing to say, look, if ultimately I get the base, I get the crowd, I get the attention politically that I seek, I'll just do a 360 or a 180, hand them over to President Tinubu, support him and endorse him. We've seen that happen time and again.
Exactly.
However, he has also committed himself. I don't know if that's really commitment, but he has said on record that, look, I'm not going to support Tinubu in 2027 because he said there was a meeting of him, Mr. Nyesom Wike, the president, and chief of staff of the president, where Mr. Wike had voluntarily offered to hold PDP for President Tinubu, exactly, hold it down for Tinubu, for Tinubu. Which many people say he's doing right now, and that he's doing very successfully, and things like that. So if that's the case, we can give Mr. Seyi Makinde the benefit of the doubt that he would actually stand for election in 2027. But like you asked, whether he would win or not is something you and I will be here to discuss again.
Sure. So let's get into the issue of this tax reform.
Right.
It's been back and forth. The last time this matter came up and signed into law, it was in June this year, and we were told that January 1st, which is just a few days to go, then it will now come into implementation as a matter of fact. But what the people are saying, that the copy that was passed in the National Assembly is not the one that has been gazetted. Many things have really changed. I think there's government inside government. And so people are really speaking with these different voices on this particular matter. And one wonders whether or not, because the intention of these tax reforms, by coming up with these four bills that finally they became an act today. The tax itself, the revenue administration, the revenue generation, and then even the port, making sure that what we used to be in the past wouldn't be by the time the act is implemented by January 1st. But again, like the Suki PDP in Sokoto State, that is Abdulrahman Dasuki said, what is now gazetted is not what the National Assembly, passed. And so in your own opinion, what will you say about that, including even the Nigerian Bar Association are in support that this particular act should not be implemented until those gray areas are looked into?
My lawyer friends tell me that if, again, with a very big if, these allegations are true, it is a criminal offense because that's serious alteration. These are laws that have been passed by a legitimate institution like the National Assembly, and then, of course, escalated to the president for his assent. And now these laws have been gazetted, hopefully to be, already built to be exactly to be enforced starting from 1st of January next year. And we had all shut down on this, saying that by 1st of January, a new set of laws with regards to our tax system will kick in. But with these allegations that have now been put forward, that is, not likely going to happen because the NBA has come out. The NBA is not a political party. It's not a political group. All right? To say that, look, we have to step it down. Let's stand down these laws until we get to the root of this. By the way, we understand that the National Assembly has set up a committee to look into this. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar has also said, look, we can't move forward with this kind of, situation. Even if you say former Vice President Abubakar is just being political about this, but how about the NBA that said we need to step it down? How about other civil society organizations or groups that say we need to step it down? So I think at this point in time, the president must show fatherliness in this regard and say that, look, if it has been altered, we've got to get to the bottom of it because the laws are made for human beings, not the other way around. So let's not make it a do or die affair. If they've been altered, let's get to determine whether that's the case. And
but when a particular bill has been signed into law, it has become an act as it is.
Right.
And so you cannot stop it until you get back again to National Assembly.
That's the point.
To make this amendment. But as it is now, it's already an act. Only it's left for the executive to implement, which of course they have set aside which day they will do that. That will be
which is January 1st. And that's why there has to be pressure again.
Yes.
That has to, because this is a law as it stands already.
Yes.
But it's just a matter of days before it comes into force. But we are saying that there has to be pressure on the executive to say we have to take this because there can be a motion to say we are recalling it because we want to take a second look at this law. I mean, there are the laws of Nigeria. If we can say let's review constitution time and again, why can we not review extant laws? These are extant laws, not even.
But the person at the helm of the affair that was given the responsibility to carry out this assignment for Nigerians. That's the person. That's Taiwo Oyedele.
Right.
Yeah. When this matter came out in the public domain, he was interviewed and he said,
"There's no such thing.
that
the laws are intact.
Yeah. That everything what they're saying is fake, as a matter of fact, just a hoax."
Well, I think we still have a few days up until that time. Incidentally, the Nigerian Bar Association has some of the finest lawyers in the world. So I think all hands will be on deck. Experts across different fields of endeavor will look at all of this, including civil society groups, media practitioners, to look at what exactly the issues are with regards to these allegations. Because, I mean, Topsy, you and I will agree that these allegations are weighty, and as such, they are not the ones to
be swept under the carpet. Don't forget, at the time when this particular bill, these bills appeared at the National Assembly for both chambers to look into them, categorically the North was not so happy with it.
All the 19 states.
Yes, all the 19 states, they kicked against it until this man, Taiwo Oyedele, took time to explain. Even lawmakers, senators from the North, like Ali Ndume, was vocal about that.
And the president had to even meet with the governors.
Yes, and then maybe explain to them the importance of this particular reform, so that at the end of the day, if they are able to become acts like the way they have become act in a single one, that will make the country to grow. Because we have to look elsewhere rather than solely depending on oil. So this tax reform will provide government to have other sources of getting money, not solely depending on oil.
Right.
Like any other country in the world, like in UK, for instance, the country survives by tax system. So if a country like us, we have oil and we have other ways of getting money, getting revenue, why are we depending solely on that? And that's the more reason why this tax reform was introduced, and then with the expectation that it's going to be active in 1st January 2026. Now, when the clauses were brought before National Assembly, many lawmakers, particularly from the northern part of Nigeria, they didn't like that. Don't you think that they are still being afraid now that the thing is getting closer to be implemented? That same fear is still in them. Not necessarily that something has happened. What they decided on is maybe the same thing that has been gazetted, but because of the fear they had initially, they're still afraid of what's going to happen by 1st January. Don't you think like that?
I think at this point in time, the honors is now on the committee that has been set up. Let's see I don't know what their time frame is, but let's see what their report will be about. I mean, what facts they will find in with regards to whether or not these allegations are true. We need to determine that, and then also need to learn a new lesson from this issue, so that we don't have people who are criminally inclined coming to tamper with issues of national interest.
I agree with you. It shouldn't happen that way.
All right.
Okay. Now let's move on to the National Assembly. Yesterday, they had to quickly look into the budget that was passed. That was presented rather by the president Friday last week, and he presented 54.18, but they finally passed 54.447 trillion naira, and at the end of the day, it's scaled through second reading. So by the time they come back, committees will now be meeting with the MDAs and see how the budget can now be implemented going forward.
Right.
But in the process of doing that, they came out categorically and said the 2025 budget, which has been signed into law and is supposed to be active, will now continue into 2026 to be terminated at the end of March 2026. And then the new budget, that 2026 budget, kicks off April as soon as possible. So in your opinion, where do you see a country, combining budgets of various years together and be running concurrently?
All right. They say one thing leads to another, and when things fall apart, the center can no longer hold.
Not all.
So this whole thing has a history to it. Once we missed it in 2023, where the carryover, we started running 2 budgets per pursue, 2024 and 2025. Now, shamefully, as you say, we're extending or we're carrying over the 2025 appropriation into the entire first quarter of 2026, which is in basic public finance an aberration, quite frankly. But it's now a matter of sheer necessity for us. We just have to do what we have to do. In fact, I'm sitting here, I'm trying to imagine how much of courage it took for even the National Assembly to announce that extension of 3 months. That's a whole lot, a whole lot of time. Yeah. And then, of course, your 2026 budget will not kick in until April of next year. Then we're wondering, what calendar are you following? All right, what kind of budgetary year or cycle are we using? Again, that is a clear indication that several things are fundamentally wrong with our systems, and those things must be corrected. It's not a matter of apportioning blame, but we must also hold people accountable. These are not just things that happen from nowhere. Somebody must have missed something. Somebody must have not done their parts or done it very well, and then what we're saying now is part of such repercussions. So we're asking ourselves, what example are we showing to the rest of the world? Which serious-minded potential foreign investor will take you seriously when you're behaving like this? How does it affect even your stock exchange, for example? How does it affect your small and medium-scale enterprises? How does it affect even large corporations? How does it affect implementation of the budget in itself? In a case where you are still struggling with a budget that ordinarily should be cycling out as it stands today. So it means that the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Budget and National Planning, the DG of Debt Management Office, and all the other key agencies, including the Federal Inland Revenue Service, for example, must put their heads together and do the hard work. Most times, also, the problem is most of those people up there are not ready to do the hard work. They know the best option that serves the overall interest of the country ultimately. But they realize that that's a long haul. That will be much more demanding. So they rather settle for what I would like to call the line of least resistance, the easiest option, the most convenient option, which does not do much of good for the country.
Honestly, and what pains me much is this National Assembly, the lawmakers, sometimes when you listen to them when they are debating on issues, they do those issues simply because they are doing it to favor the executive. But what they say is not truly the way we are hearing at the end of when. But what they say is not what we see when they are being implemented. Do you understand what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, because you would have imagined the Senate President at any point in time, despite the fact that the budgets are running concurrently, that of 2024, 2025, and now 2025 will now continue to 2026 March before the 2026 will now kick off to end in 31st December 2026. Just hearing that this cacophony of voices, you know that something is wrong fundamentally.
Right.
And that goes out to tell you that indeed, even by implementation, they can't get it right. The money they are supposed to get, you don't even know whether they are getting it using the 2024 or 2025, or probably by the time the 2026 starts running. So it becomes a little bit confusing. Right. But again, the president categorically mentioned that by the time the 2026 budget starts, everything would now become normalized, and it will continue systematically and to end very well on December 31st, 2026. So, words are not, they are good to say, but when it comes to doing, you don't get that really happening. And that's where my fear is.
Yeah, quite frankly, of course, we must match words to action. But again, the question is, how did many of these legislators get to the House of Representatives and the Senate? How many of them actually worked hard, earned their electoral victories?
That is it.
Because if your actions were motivated by the overall interest of the people you are supposed to be representing, there's a way you carry yourself. There will be clear indications in that direction. But if you think you have other ways of winning at the polls or winning election, you are not likely going to care much about what happens to the people back at home, those who you're supposed to be rooting for, so to say.
Yeah.
We've seen many cases in this country. I mean, you have covered the National Assembly for several years, where some House members, some senators don't even go to their constituents, don't even go to their various senatorial districts much, because they are more based in Abuja than anywhere else. They don't see that place as home until when it's getting close to election year again, and then they start running from pillar to post, trying to get votes in a way that is desperate. But again, the question is, have we been able to drive democracy and good governance the way we should? Because that's where we are right now.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you won't even be seeing this irresponsible cross-carpeting that we're seeing right now.
Honestly. Uyi, thank you so much.
My pleasure always.
I appreciate you for finding time to be with me on this program, The Dex.
I'm delighted.
Let me feel you. All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Well, viewers, that's how far we can go on the program, The Dex. You watch and listen to my colleague, in-house analyst, Uyi Agbonfuegbe. Put it things in what you know. I kept struggling.
You took time to rehearse the name.
Thank you so much for being part of the program. Well, that's how far we can go on the program, The Dex. Again, we shall be coming again with yet another edition based with those issues that are trending on the newspapers. And I believe as time goes on, you will get to know more about the detail concerning this tax reform and how it's going to be implemented by January 1st, 2026. Again, my name is Topsy Gimba. See you again, and bye-bye.